The air in these chambers, it thickens, does it not? Not with jasmine, but with something far older, far more potent. A scent of ambition, or the cold tang of fear that clings to the lavish silk. A whisper, yes, but not the soft murmur of affection. Hear it now, this sound that coils in the velvet folds of night. The silk, it rustles, not a gentle sigh, but a dry, chilling hiss, a serpent stirring in the heart of opulence. Who else but I, hidden behind this very pillar, could bear witness to such a secret, such a symphony of doom? They speak of love within these gilded walls, a fierce, possessive love it was. Yet I have seen its true face, beautiful, yes, but sharpened to a blade's edge, capable of carving an empire from desire. A single tear, I saw it. A perfect, glistening pearl, falling from her lash, tracing a path across the Sultan's outstretched hand. Not sorrow, no, not even regret. It was a drop of pure, distilled venom, sealing a verdict no one was meant to hear. A silent decree whispered into the dark. A destiny forged in the crucible of a gaze that was both devotion and dominion. They called her a monster, you understand. A creature born not just of the Sultan's consuming fire, but of the dynasty's hunger for power. But the true horror, it was never in her heart, not truly. It was in the sudden, terrible strength that ignited in her touch, in her very breath, once she had tasted power, once she realized the game she must play. Here, in this hushed moment, the game truly began. A grand, ruthless design, woven with threads of silk and strands of poison, played out on the chessboard of the harem. The stakes? Not merely lives, but the very soul of this ancient dynasty. Watch now. See how the lines blur between love and fear, between devotion and dread. Her fate sealed then by that one shimmering tear. But the game, my friends, the game was far from played. Они говорят о ней теперь. Имя ее – благоухающий шепот, несомый дворцовым бризом заклинание. Но прежде чем шелка замерцали и драгоценности запылали, прежде чем взгляд султана стал ее личным солнцем, путь ее был вымощен не позолоченными обещаниями, а острыми, неумолимыми камнями предательства. Пока низшие души гарема тонули в сладостной истоме шербета и ритмичном покачивании забытых танцев, она училась. О, как она училась! Из затененных альковов, куда свет едва осмеливался ступить, она наблюдала. Не танцовщиц, но визирей, чьи лица были высечены в масках, но глаза придавали дрожь амбиций, вспышку страха. Она научилась читать сжатие челюсти, едва уловимое изменение позы, почти незаметную дрожь руки, тянущейся к чаше. Каждый жест – слово, каждое молчание – приговор. Она взвешивала каждое высказывание, каждую шепчущуюся тайну, словно это была капля сильного яда, различая ее истинную природу, ее потенциал возвысить или уничтожить. Ее красота, когда-то простой факт рождения, стала оружием, отточенным и отполированным, щитом для отражения подозрений, клинком, чтобы прорубить слои придворного обмана. Она была наложницей, собственностью, чья жизнь стоила не больше глотка воды в обширной, безжалостной пустыне османского двора. И все же внутри нее шевелился иной голод. Не по золоту, не по комфорту, но по самой сути власти. Командовать, формировать, выживать. И вот она начала плести. Паутину, почти невидимую, но достаточно крепкую, чтобы связать. Каждый шаг – риск, каждое дыхание – вызов традициям, таким же древним и непреклонным, как сами дворцовые стены. Это была не история о судьбоносной любви, не страстная капитуляция перед волей султана. Это был более холодный расчет, тщательно спланированное восхождение, скрытое за глазами, которые могли гореть огнем, одновременно манящим и опасным. Оброненный шелковый платок, казавшийся случайным, становился приглашением, проверкой. Мгновенное прикосновение пальцев, мимолетный взгляд, полный невысказанного смысла. Затем первая тайная беседа, украденная в приглушенных коридорах, где даже воздух, казалось, затаил дыхание. Слово здесь, вопрос там, тонко сеющие семена союза или, быть может, корни будущего разрушения. Каждый символ, каждый, казалось бы, незначительный жест нес на себе вес тысячи невысказанных битв. Династия, родословная – все зависело от этих хрупких начал. В тишине ночи, когда дворец спал, ее разум, острый как отравленный кинжал, продолжал свою работу. Игра королев началась, и она, неприметная тень, была готова играть. The silk drapes shimmered, yet held no warmth. The air, thick with the scent of jasmine and the unspoken promise of poison. Every glance, every whisper, a potential betrayal. She, the woman who had ascended higher than any before, now found herself enthroned upon a precipice of her own making. His love, a blessing that had once been her shield against the casual cruelties of the harem, was now the deepest curse, for it made her visible, an object of envy so profound it demanded her destruction. How many nights had she sat at this very table, its surface polished to a dark mirror, watching her own reflection twist as her fingers closed around the quill. A simple stroke, a name whispered into the silence, and the life was extinguished, a destiny rewritten. She knew the weight of that quill. In these golden chambers, opulent and suffocating, her hand had indeed signed sentences, her gaze decided fates.
This was the pinnacle, yes. But what kind of summit was this? A bloody throne, built upon the bones of forgotten rivals, where every supposed ally was but a potential assassin. But there was one night, one singular night. The air tasted of iron and something else, something colder than fear. It was the scent of inevitability. The very bloodline of the Ottomans felt brittle, stretched, taut. Before her, on the dark wood, lay a decree. Not merely an administrative paper, but a parchment heavy with the future of the entire dynasty. And upon it, the Sultan's seal, a symbol of absolute power. But this time, it was not for him to break. It was for her to command its rupture, its shattering. Her hand, usually so steady, trembled. Not from weakness, no, never from weakness. It was from the immense, crushing weight of what she was about to do. This was no ordinary seal. This was the ancient mark that bound the very soul of the empire, and with its tearing, her own soul would be irrevocably altered. It would be drenched in the very essence of power, and that essence, my friends, is often poison. They would call her a monster. They would whisper it in the shadows, scrawl it on the walls of history. But what truly did she become that night? A weapon, yes, forged in the crucible of a world that demanded ruthlessness. Look closely, beyond the shimmering veils of legend. Was it monstrous ambition that drove her hand? Or was it the primal, untamed instinct of a mother, desperate to secure the survival of her own bloodline, her own progeny, in a court where every child born was a potential rival, every brother a potential executioner? The Sultan's love had given her wings, yes. But it had also lifted her to a height where the air was thin, where every breath was a calculated risk. And at that height, to survive, one must learn to play a game far older and far more brutal than any king's. A game of queens, where the stakes were not merely crowns, but lives. That night, the seal on the decree cracked, changing the course of the dynasty forever. It was then that her blood became poisoned with an unyielding resolve, forcing her to embrace the very monster she was destined to be labeled. It was the moment when not just a heart, but the very soul of a woman became an unblinking, unwavering weapon. Was she a monster? Or merely a reflection of the ruthless world that itself had created her, forcing her to cross every boundary, to shatter every taboo for the survival of her offspring and her hard-won place under the sun? The choice was made, the die was cast, and the woman who emerged from that gilded chamber was no longer merely a woman. She was the architect of a new order, marked forever by the true price of power, stained by the very blood she sought to protect.
A monster, perhaps, but a monster born of necessity, sculpted by the very hands that sought to destroy her. We've spoken of her fire, her relentless ascent. But what of him? The Sultan, whose very shadow could bring kingdoms to their knees. What did he see when his gaze, heavy with the fate of worlds, fell upon her? He did not see the whispers, the fear that coiled in the hearts of his court. He saw a defiance that mirrored his own, a mind sharp enough to parry his most intricate thoughts. It was not the pliant surrender he was accustomed to, the perfumed obeisance of his harem. It was a challenge, a vibrant, dangerous flame that drew him in, closer than any woman had dared approach the sun. This was no mere tremor of passion, ladies. This was a profound and almost agonizing recognition. She, alone, amidst the gilded cage of his palace, dared to be utterly herself. A luxury denied to him, the absolute monarch, whose every breath was weighed by the scales of empire. And there, in the hushed quiet of his chambers, amidst the rustle of silk and the heavy scent of jasmine, he wrestled with the monster the world saw and the woman he knew. How does one hold an empire, a sacred bloodline stretching back through conquests and legends, when the heart, the very core of one's being, is inextricably bound to a force capable of burning every bridge, every tradition, every whispered rule of the dynasty? His silence in the face of her most audacious maneuvers, her most blatant disregard for protocol, that was not weakness. It was the crushing weight of understanding. He saw the intricate threads of betrayal she spun around others, the potential for poison in every sweet word offered to his enemies. He knew, with a certainty that chilled his very bones, that she was his greatest threat. Yet, she was also his only truth, his only equal. An inseparable part of his own destiny, a shadow clinging to his light, woven into the very fabric of his rule. This internal war, this agonizing duality, had to remain unseen. For a sultan to show doubt, to display the raw agony of such a conflict between crushing duty and an all-consuming, mad attachment, it would be to invite chaos. His power, his very divinity in the eyes of his people, rested on unwavering resolve. So he wore his mask of stone, and in the depths of his eyes, where no common man dared to look, the silent battle raged on, hidden from all but the silent stone pillars that bore witness to his solitude. The silk rustles no more. The antechambers, once alive with the silent ballet of intrigue, now hold only the lingering scent of sandalwood and memory. But the silence, it is not truly silence, is it? A whisper lingers, woven into the very tapestries that now hang still, in the very stones beneath our feet. You've watched her rise, seen the blood on her hands, the shadows she cast. You've felt the chill of her ambition, the warmth of her gaze that could promise both paradise and ruin. And now, as the final curtain descends, you wonder, don't you? Was she the beast history claims? Or merely a reflection, sharpened to a blade by the cruelty of the world she inhabited? The game of queens, they called it. But the rules, dear observer, were etched in stone by men, centuries before her first breath. A bloody ledger of succession, of betrayal and power, where a woman's worth was measured by the son she bore, and her influence by the poison she dared to wield. She simply played it better. With a woman's intuition, a mother's ferocity, and a survivor's instinct that knew the difference between silk and steel, between a lover's embrace and a dagger's thrust. Her bloodline flows still, a potent river within the dynasty's veins, shaping kings and queens for generations to come. Her decisions, a silent echo in these very halls, shift the weight of crowns even now, long after her name has been sealed in the annals of glory and damnation. Look closely at the faces of power that walk these corridors today. Can you not see a flicker of her resolve, a glint of her ruthless fire? There are no heroes here, no villains bathed in absolute darkness, only players. and the survivors. Those who dared to breathe, to scheme, to love, to kill, to carve their names into the very heart of an empire. The true history, my friends, is not a simple tale of good against evil, but a sprawling, intricate dance of shadows, where every choice leaves an indelible mark, and every victory is bought with a hidden cost. The cost of her love, the true price of her power, the haunting legacy of her monster. It is a whisper that will stay with you long after you leave these hallowed, haunted walls.